At its peak, Victoria's Secret was worth $28 billion. It had 1,100 stores. It controlled 35% of the entire American lingerie market. Its fashion show was the most watched event in the fashion industry, viewed by over 1 billion people. So how does a brand that dominant disappear almost overnight? This is the story of the greatest collapse in retail history, and nobody saw it coming. But to understand how Victoria's Secret fell, you have to go back to where it started. Not in a boardroom, not in a fashion house, in a shopping mall. In 1977, where a man named Roy Raymond was humiliated. Roy Raymond was a Stanford graduate student when he walked into a department store to buy lingerie for his wife. What he found wasn't romantic, it wasn't elegant. It was a fluorescent-lit clinical display of beige cotton underwear, packaged like something you'd find next to the hardware section. He was embarrassed. He felt like a criminal. And that embarrassment became a $28 billion idea. Raymond borrowed $40,000 from a bank, another $40,000 from his in-laws, and in 1977, he opened the first Victoria's Secret in a San Francisco shopping center. The name was deliberate. Victorian England, refined, mysterious, sensual on the inside. The store had dark wood panels, silk drapes, oriental rugs. It looked like a boudoir, not a department store. And in its very first year, it made $500,000 in revenue. Raymond opened 3 more stores and launched a mail-order catalog. But here's what most people don't know. It was already failing. By 1982, despite the sales, the rapid expansion had nearly bankrupted him. Roy Raymond had created something extraordinary, a concept that had never existed before. He just couldn't scale it, so he sold it. All 6 stores, the catalog, the entire brand, for $1 million, to a man who would turn it into something Raymond never imagined. Les Wexner was already a retail powerhouse by the time he spotted Victoria's Secret. He'd built the Limited into one of the fastest-growing retail empires in America. He understood malls like a general understands a battlefield. Wexner looked at what Raymond had built, a store designed to make men feel comfortable, and flipped the entire concept. If men like Victoria's Secret, that's a bonus, he said, but they should feel a little uncomfortable in there. Wexner made Victoria's Secret for women. He wanted affordable lingerie that felt luxurious. He studied the European upscale brand La Perla and reverse-engineered it for the American mass market. Same aspiration, a fraction of the price. Think about that for a second. He didn't invent a new product. He took something that already existed for the wealthy and made it accessible to everyone. That's the formula. That's how you build a billion-dollar brand. By the early 1990s, Victoria's Secret had 350 stores across America. Sales had crossed $1 billion. It was the largest lingerie retailer in the United States, and it was still accelerating. Then, in 1995, a man named Ed Razek had an idea that would make Victoria's Secret not just a brand, but a cultural institution. The first Victoria's Secret fashion show was held at the Plaza Hotel in New York City, August 1995. It was bold. It was theatrical. It was unlike anything the lingerie industry had ever seen. Within 4 years, it had gone online, and in 1999, 1.5 million viewers crashed the website trying to watch it simultaneously. Time magazine called it the internet-breaking moment of its era. Razek brought in the world's biggest supermodels. Then he brought in the world's biggest musicians, Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, Rihanna, Ariana Grande, and the Angels, Adriana Lima, Alessandra Ambrosio, Heidi Klum, Gisele Bündchen. They weren't just models, they were personalities. They were brands unto themselves. In 2000, Gisele Bündchen walked the runway in the most expensive piece of lingerie ever created, a $15 million diamond and ruby-encrusted fantasy bra. This wasn't a lingerie company anymore. This was a spectacle, an empire, a cultural event. At its peak under CEO Sharon Jester Turney, sales grew 70% in 9 years, reaching $7.7 billion annually. Victoria's Secret wasn't just a store, it was a personality trait. And if you were alive and paying attention during those years, you know exactly what I mean. Before we get into where it all went wrong, because it goes wrong in spectacular fashion, if you're new here, this channel is dedicated to stories exactly like this one. The biggest brands, the most powerful executives, the most dramatic collapses in business history. There's a lot more waiting for you. Go check it out. Links are below. Now, back to Victoria's Secret, because this is where things get very ugly very fast. Success is dangerous, not because it makes you weak, but because it makes you certain. And by the mid-2000s, Victoria's Secret was absolutely certain it was untouchable. The world around it was changing. Body positivity, size inclusivity, the hashtag #MeToo movement. Consumers were demanding something different from the brands they spent money with. Victoria's Secret didn't just ignore it, they mocked it. In 2018, Chief Marketing Officer Ed Razek gave an interview to Vogue magazine. He was asked why the brand didn't include plus-size or transgender models in the fashion show. His answer was staggering. He said the show was a fantasy and implied that including anyone who didn't fit the brand's narrow definition of beauty would somehow break the spell. The backlash was immediate, explosive, and completely justified. But that was only the beginning. In August 2019, Jeffrey Epstein, one of the most prolific convicted sex sex offenders in American history, was arrested by the FBI, and the name that kept appearing alongside his, Les Wexner. Epstein had served as Wexner's personal financial manager for years, reportedly managing hundreds of millions of dollars of his assets. Survivors and investigators allege that Epstein had used his proximity to the Victoria's Secret brand, its modeling network, its prestige, as leverage for his crimes. Wexner said he'd cut ties with Epstein back in 2007 when he discovered what Epstein had been doing. But the documents painted a far more entangled picture. Rozek resigned in August 2019. The fashion show was canceled that same year. It would not return for 5 years. Victoria's Secret was on fire, and the flames were entirely self-inflicted. Wexner stepped down as CEO in February 2020. He'd run the brand for 38 years. Then COVID-19 hit, and the already damaged machine broke down completely. 250 stores closed, then more and more. In 2021, Victoria's Secret was spun off from L Brands and became an independent, publicly traded company. The stock stumbled immediately. Investors weren't convinced, and while Victoria's Secret was collapsing inward, Rihanna was building an empire. Savage X Fenty launched in 2018. It was everything Victoria's Secret refused to be: inclusive sizes, diverse models, a celebration of real bodies. Third Love, Aerie, Skims. Competitors emerged overnight, speaking directly to the customers Victoria's Secret had spent a decade dismissing. The market didn't wait for Victoria's Secret to catch up. It moved on without them, from a market share of 35% down to around 20%. Billions in brand value gone. A brand that once defined the category was now fighting to survive inside it. But here's what's interesting. Victoria's Secret isn't dead. In 2024, the company made a genuinely surprising hire. Hilary Super, the former CEO of Savage X Fenty, of all companies, took over as the new CEO of Victoria's Secret. The fashion show returned in October 2024, streamed on Amazon Prime Video, with a cast that was diverse, inclusive, and critically widely praised. And in fiscal year 2025, comparable store sales rose 5%, the strongest growth the brand had seen since splitting from L Brands. Super put it plainly. She said the brand had become watered down by years of trying not to offend anyone. She's bringing sex appeal back, but on terms the modern consumer can actually connect with. The verdict? Still out. The damage done over a decade of arrogance, scandal, and denial doesn't disappear overnight. But there is a lesson here, maybe the most important lesson this channel explores. Victoria's Secret didn't collapse because the market changed. Every market changes. It collapsed because the people at the top refused to believe the change applied to them. They confused dominance with permanence. They mistook silence for approval. And by the time they woke up, the world had already moved on. If you want more stories like this one, the biggest rises, the most stunning falls, the decisions that changed industries, everything is right here on this channel. Hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming next. This is Behind the Collapse.